Hunter Biden appears to be fighting back against Republican attacks, asking the judge involved in his criminal gun charges to subpoena former President Trump and former AG Bill Barr, alongside other DOJ officials, to try and prove his case is politically motivated. Biden has been accused of illegally possessing a firearm while addicted to drugs, though he pleaded not guilty to the charges.
Biden's subpoena request hones in on Republican criticisms regarding the initial investigation. At the time, high-ranking Republicans like House Oversight and Accountability Chairman James Comer and House Ways and Means Chair Jason Smith slammed federal prosecutors for offering Biden a, quote, sweetheart deal. Biden has accused Republicans, including Trump and Barr, as launching a, quote, sustained, almost nonstop public pressure campaign, end quote, for prosecutors to bring charges against him.
It is clear no measure of charges against Mr. Biden will ever be enough to appease Chairman Comer and Smith and their MAGA allies, Biden's attorneys wrote in their motion. So nothing new, I think, here from Hunter Biden in terms of strategy. He's been pretty vocal, and his attorneys have been pretty vocal in trying to slam this entire probe as politicized. But the problem is that one of the main reasons that this investigation started was because there were IRS whistleblowers that came to the Republicans and said that they had been discouraged from following certain leads in their case because their leadership was apparently worried that it could lead to allegations of corruption and bribery against the president. And so they didn't want to continue the Hunter Biden probe or bring charges against him as a plot to protect the president. And that was when the Republicans started digging more into these alleged corruption and bribery crimes and started uncovering some of the shell companies and web of transactions that lead back to foreign governments and became very profitable for the Biden family. So Hunter Biden repeatedly skirts accountability for his actions. He repeatedly blames the people who are coming after him for being politically motivated. And even if that were true, that doesn't negate the fact that these charges have a legitimate basis and a lot of evidentiary support.
I think the main question here is, what do we know for sure that Hunter Biden did? What evidence has come out that absolutely implicates Joe Biden and Hunter Biden's actions? I think even if Hunter Biden is guilty here, does it matter if it's politically motivated? Genuinely, if we subpoena some kind of communication records between Bill Barr and Donald Trump while they were in office, and they say, you know what, this would be great to take down the Biden family, this would be politically convenient for us, does that matter if Hunter Biden and Joe Biden are actually guilty? Similarly, with Trump's cases being held all around the country, does it matter if the people trying him say, you know what, I really don't like the guy, I really would like for him to not be president? Would it matter if there's actually evidence there that suggests he committed a crime? And I think a lot of people have suggested that Trump's prosecution is political in nature, but I think that the timing of it is not the main indicator of that. I think, you have mob bosses all of the time being tailed by detectives, by DA's offices for decades until they have enough evidence or there's enough distrust within the mob and you have some people agree to give a deposition, to give testimony. They'll wait them out. They'll wait until that moment where they have concrete evidence or some kind of confession or deal making with someone close to the head of the mob. These are RICO charges coming against Trump and others. It's not, uncommon for these to take years to come out. A lot of people have pointed to the timeliness of this, but even if these things are political, who cares? If someone is guilty, they should be prosecuted for that crime. Hunter Biden included, Trump included, Joe Biden included. That's really where I stand on all of this. And I think, the tribalism that's frankly at play here of people, thinking some folks need different treatment under the law. I find it ridiculous. Was it a sweetheart deal initially for Hunter Biden? Absolutely. Was the judge right to question that? Absolutely. Could this be a political prosecution? Also, absolutely. And dealing with the facts of that for what it is, does it matter if he's guilty of a crime? To me, it doesn't.
Yeah, I think the rub here is that when people say a prosecution is political, is that they are alleging that the facts don't line up with the claims that are made or the charges that are made, which is the case in a lot of the Trump indictments that have come down so far, particularly the fraud case in New York City and the insurrection case coming out of Jack Smith in Washington, D.C. And the fundamental difference for me with what's happening right now with Hunter Biden is that it's not disputed. It's not in dispute that he lied on this gun form. It's not in dispute that he failed to pay his taxes because his lawyers have already admitted that he paid it back and therefore it should be let go. And part of the deal that was brought before the judge, the so-called sweetheart deal, was that he would avoid jail time on the gun charge so long as he pleaded guilty to the tax crimes. And that deal fell apart because it also supposedly granted him a massive level of immunity on everything else regarding the facts of the case, which would have covered his time at Burisma, his time on the Chinese energy company CFE, and all of his financials related there within, which was the subject of this House investigative probe into whether or not Joe Biden was personally benefiting and profiting from Hunter Biden's business dealings abroad. And so far, at the very least, there's a ton of evidence that Hunter believed that Joe was his cash cow or his golden token that he was going to use in order to make all of this money. There's WhatsApp messages where he's tacitly threatening a Chinese business official that he was going to have to call his father if they didn't get what was promised to them. There was testimony from Devin Archer that Hunter Biden would repeatedly call his father during business meetings to prove that he had access to the then vice president. And there's been some indication that perhaps Joe Biden had gotten involved in the firing of a Ukrainian prosecutor because of his investigation into Burisma. And so there's tons of circumstantial evidence, which a lot of people, particularly from the Democratic Party, will say, well, circumstantial evidence isn't really evidence or isn't really proof. And that's just not how any type of evidentiary support works. Circumstantial evidence, if there's enough of it to the point that a jury believes that you were guilty of that crime, is used in cases all the time, particularly if you're thinking about a murder charge, for example. You don't always have to find fingerprints on the gun for someone to be convicted of a murder.
I think what's interesting here is most people who are of the status of like Hunter Biden, of Donald Trump, people who have a ton of money and very expensive lawyers, can typically circumvent the law, get sweetheart plea deals. And I think what's different is there's more public attention to these cases because of who they are and what their presence in a court of law means politically. And when it comes to the prosecution of Donald Trump, if he was in Hunter Biden's position and he had entered into a plea deal between the attorneys, the prosecuting attorney and his defending attorney, and the judge kicked back that plea deal, I believe there would be many Trump supporters who are outraged at the judge doing that, questioning if his legal rights were being violated by the judge doing that. And I think the situation, when you flip them back and forth, when you talk about Trump's family ties to foreign entities in Saudi Arabia, you really begin to unfold that the whole thing is very political. Many people's positions on both cases are very political. Not just in, whether you agree or not that the cases are having an equal application of the law as compared to other similar cases, but really just that they've been brought before the court at all and that they haven't proceeded in a way that things normally do for elites in our country. It's usually easy for them, if they have a really expensive attorney, to circumvent any kind of prison time for these actions when you have Hunter Biden, in Hunter Biden's case, 15 years being the maximum charge that he could have. But so many times when you have an expensive attorney, you don't face jail time at all. You get probation, you get a slap on the wrist. And so I think what's unique about these cases is perhaps they have been brought forth for political reasons. You had Bill Barr talk about in his book, President Trump at the time, asking him about Joe Biden's son. And he said, I don't want to talk to you anymore about Hunter Biden. Stop asking me. So I think Hunter Biden's probably smart to ask for this subpoena just to point out that the political prosecution goes both ways. But me personally, I'm just on the side of if you're guilty of a crime, you should be prosecuted for it equally as anyone else would be.
I'm curious what would actually come from the subpoena that wasn't already brought out in the impeachment inquiry or impeachment probe into Donald Trump when he had that sort of infamous phone call with Ukraine. But we're completely out of time. That's going to do it for us today on Rising. Jessica, it was great to be back hosting with you again.
It was another good Friday in matching turtlenecks, matching as usual.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thanks. We'll see you next Friday.
Bye, y'all.